Genshin Impact Burnout. It is something we've all experienced, and it's obviously the topic of today's video. Should you quit the game? Should you play something else? I mean, these are very common pieces of advice. We'll talk about all of that, but I think a good way to sort of just start this discussion is to look at a post here on Kokomi Mains where someone has sort of said, you know what, guys, today I'll be quitting Genshin Impact. And I think there's a lot that this person has said that I think we can sympathize with. So they've said that the game has started to feel very stale for them. In the past, they used to feel the need to use their resin, but in the last few months, they just don't give a crap anymore. And like when their resin is full, they just will be like, well, you know what, whatever. I'm just going to go and burn it the quickest way, and that is through the weapon enhancement material method. And they also sort of go on here to say that whilst Genshin Impact introduced the trading card game as a permanent in-game mode, and whilst it's very good as for a card game, it's just not what they signed up for. It's not the reason why they started to play Genshin. They also go on to mention that they've started to work full-time, and every time they finish work, they just don't have the motivation to play the game anymore. In other words, the game Genshin Impact. And today's pretty much, kind of the cutoff point. It's like, you know what, I'm gonna leave it. So yeah, from this post, you can clearly see that this person has been experiencing Genshin Impact burnout. It's basically the mood or the feeling of, I'll play it later, and it then sort of turns into a bit of like apathy, basically saying, you know what, I don't care anymore if I don't do my commissions or resin or burn my resin, it doesn't matter. And there might be a lot of reasons why a person might feel like this, and I'm not here to dissect the reasons why people would feel burnout. I'm more here to talk about what should we do. And I think the number one thing, or the number one piece of advice that I'd give to anyone, is to stop consuming Genshin Impact news. That is, don't go onto YouTube, don't look at what the latest leaks are, don't go onto Genshin's like social media, because they also post constantly. Literally devolve yourself from anything that's got to do with Genshin news. In fact, go onto YouTube, create a new account if you can, and just sort of start watching from scratch, because one of the biggest things that leads to burnout is this principle of out of sight, out of mind. But if it's in your sight, it's going to be in your mind. So if you are constantly or even passively consuming Genshin content, it can feel overwhelming. And if it can, especially if you've been playing for an excessively long amount of time, feel like, it's getting stale. So that would be my first big piece of advice. My second piece of advice is to just literally stop playing the game whatsoever. The game's going nowhere. There's even a system inside the game, the Stellar Reunion. So if you've been taking a long while away from Genshin, you can actually pretty much get back in, and about 70% of your progress you can pretty much catch up by using that sort of mechanic in the game. So it's not like the game is going to be too overly punishing if you do take a break. And then, of course, finally, a lot of people have said, well, play something else. And in my opinion, when it comes to playing other games, you've got to be very, very careful. I think it's a very dangerous idea, because playing other video games can essentially make you burned out on something else. So this is the big problem. We always need to take perspective as to why we are playing things. If you have a dedicated amount of your time in your day for entertainment, for leisure, then yes, that is something that a game can fulfill. But the moment you really cross into the territory of it becoming a chore, yeah, that is when people get burnt out. And if you play another game, for instance, a competitive shooter, you will start feeling the burnout a lot quicker than just something like, let's say, a visual novel, which is something you can sit back in, relax in your chair, and just sort of very passively consume, which is, I think, a lot better for most people. But this is the thing. I don't think playing other games, and I don't think playing other Hoyo games is the solution. Now, you might say, well, on your channel, you've clearly started playing Honkai and so on. Yes, I have. And the reason I've played Honkai is to not only take a break from Genshin, but to get more content generation ideas. And I think I've been very successful, because playing something like Honkai has, if anything, opened my eyes as to how bad Genshin is, how neglected the same game is. from the same company, but that is a separate topic for a different day. But the point is, it is a bit of a double-edged sword if you're gonna play a different game. If you are going to do so, make sure it is something that fits in well with a scheduled routine that you're following every day, and don't overdo it. This is the thing, a lot of people think that gaming is about sitting still for hours in a chair. It's not. If you sit still for more than 1 hour, you need to get up. You need to physically get up for at least 10 minutes. This is the only way in which you're going to be physically healthy. Even sitting in front of a screen for a long time can be draining on you as a person. So my best advice would be to also limit your own personal screen time. It'll help a lot with the burnout. Something like doing the dishes or just quickly vacuuming the apartment can be a lifesaver, especially when you are tired of everything, especially when you are tired of a computer screen. So these are just some of the strategies that I can sort of give or share. But yes, I mean, burnout is something we all experience to certain degrees. It's something that fluctuates as well. Sometimes you do have enthusiasm. So for instance, in Genshin Impact, with the new artifact set, it's something that I want to do. It's something that I feel like I can use to generate more and more content, but obviously that's also going to get stale to a point. And yes, whilst the onus is not fully on Hoyo to keep us entertained, I do feel like a lot of the burnout in Genshin Impact has been due to them moving away from the core principles of what made the game an action RPG and making it almost too casual, but casual in a grindy sort of way. This is in contrast to something like Honkai, which is essentially allows you to go and you've got like the quick LTE button, and literally it takes less than 1 minute for me to do all my dailies, apply all my boosters for my adventure rank tasks, and I can literally just be out of Honkai in 1 minute. It takes zero time. It's a perfect sort of thing to do whilst you're waiting at the airport or waiting to taxi someone or whatever. So yeah. The point here is that when it comes to burnout, the ways in which games implement their mechanics, the way in which Genshin has implemented it, is not the healthiest thing, and unfortunately I think more and more people are suffering from it. And I think the game developers themselves have thought that they probably taken notice of this, and they think it's the combat. It's exactly the opposite. It's all the other crap that they put in. It's the unskippable dialogue, it's the limited time events that you're forced to play, it's events that you cannot re-experience, areas that you cannot re-experience. It's basically forcing you to play 90% through garbage content, and the 10% that is actually good, yeah, you often don't have the motivation to finish that. And that is Genshin Impact Burnout in a nutshell. Sorry if I'm sounding like I'm rambling. This is just a sort of way for me to unpack, de-stress, and sort of, I don't know what the word is, just for my mind to also turn a bit of a gear as to my own perspective on burnout. Now, if you will excuse me, there won't be a Genshin Impact video or anything else tonight, because I'm going to do anything now but Genshin Impact, and I hope you guys can also just sort of take a bit of a break, especially with holiday season. Be with your families, the game's going nowhere, and let's sort of tackle it again in the new year. Cheers.